Let's get some perspective from Cosatu. We're joined by Sizwe Pamla. He speaks for the organization. Mr. Pamla, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. So as we heard from the Statistician General, even before COVID-19, unemployment numbers in the country have been rising.
Indeed, that's true. I mean, if you look at where we were in 2012, when we adopted the 2030 vision, or the NDP, we were having a 25% unemployment in South Africa. And since then, a decade later, if you look at all of the policies that were put on the table, the situation has actually gotten worse. So COVID has exacerbated an already bad, terrible situation. Sadly, we don't see any light at the end of the tunnel when you consider the fact that we just had a budget speech and the State of the Nation address where very little was presented really as a solution to this unemployment crisis.
As an alliance partner, what kind of pressure are you then able to exert? You speak of policies abound in the country, but implementation, many would very well say, is lacking.
It is indeed. I mean, we have done everything. We have exerted pressure at a political level. We have come out with solutions at a network level. We sat down with government. We said we would help you to fix the issue of load shedding. We came out with the ESCOM Social Compact as a way of trying to give assistance. We went to NEDLEC, sat with all social partners. We participated in the development of the reconstruction and recovery plan. The problem is, well, once we are done at that level of NEDLEC, it is left to individual government departments. Sadly, when you look at the budget speech, the budget cuts that were implemented in that budget speech makes it difficult to actually achieve many of the targets that government has set for itself.
When you have 3.4 million out of 10 million young people between the ages of 15 and 24 being unemployed and assessing the situation on the ground in South Africa, what conclusion do you come to?
Well, it's beyond a crisis. I mean, the July riots last year were a reminder of what is possible when we have an army of unemployed young people sitting at home. You are having young people watching their dreams pass them by in an environment where there's hopelessness. You are going to start to experience the social ills, like we have seen the spiraling crime rate. If you look at the drug abuse in many of our communities, these are the problems that come with unemployment. It's an unsustainable situation going forward. Sooner or later, the social order is not going to hold in this country because you cannot have the half of the adult working population seated at home with no means of feeding and taking care of themselves.
Mr. Pamla, there's been a conversation that is floating around about South Africa being another derailed African state. When you talk about a change in a social order because the current situation is not sustainable, what then do you say to people who will maybe argue that the country needs to go beyond, we spoke about this a little bit earlier on, beyond rhetoric, making unpopular decision, according to at least one analyst that we spoke to on the show. Do you perceive that your alliance partner is brave enough?
Well, firstly, we don't understand what unpopular decisions people are talking about. Because, like I'm saying, social partners are on board. We have said to business, labor, at NEDLEC to discuss various solutions. So there is support. We've all been trying to be constructive partners, working with the private sector to have a social compact and give this government all of the necessary support. So the reality here is that government adopted a macroeconomic framework that has suffocated the economy instead of resuscitating it. So it's a question of abandoning that macroeconomic framework and exploring other alternative solutions. Because as things stand, you cannot outsource your developmental framework and developmental agenda to the private sector. Listen to what the president said in his speech. He said the private sector creates jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. Now, when you have that kind of an attitude, a decade after you introduced the NDP that was saying the same thing, then it means that you are not learning lessons from the last decade. The reality is, when the NDP was first presented, Cosatu said the labor and economic chapters of the NDP were not going to help us to achieve the goals that we were setting for ourselves. A decade later, we have been proven right, said. So the issue here is we do support government, but the policies that are currently being implemented are policies that have been there for the last 2 decades, and the results are there that these policies are not working. It's a question of exploring other alternative solutions, because the ones on the table are not working at all.
Mr. Pamla, before we let you go, please do allow me to take advantage of this moment, as we have heard from the chairperson or the chairman of the Premier Soccer League, Dr. Irvin Khoza, saying that they've earmarked the weekend of the 8th and the 9th of April for soccer fans to return to stadiums. Not sure if you are a soccer fan or if this news means anything to you.
Yes, we actually welcome this. It's a welcome development. It's not just for soccer fans, but it's for people who work in that sector. Many of them who have been denied the opportunity to earn a living. So we hope that soccer fans will cooperate. They will work with the authorities to make sure that they comply with the regulations that have been put in place. But it's a positive development. It's important because there are people whose livelihoods have been derailed as a result of soccer fans not being allowed to go back to the stadium. So this is something that we support, and we hope that if everything improves, the number will be adjusted to 100% in the near future.